Dear friends, welcome to the Wednesday Word on Wednesday the 27th of March. The beginning of Holy Week, Palm Sunday, coincided with the end of our series on Joseph at the 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock services. It's remarkable how the words spoken by Joseph to his brothers at the end of the story could have been spoken by Jesus. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what's now being done, the saving of many lives. That's Genesis 50 and verse 20. Joseph's brothers were so enraged by his grandiose interpretation of his dreams, which predicted that one day they would all bow down before him, that they nearly killed him, and only at the last minute did they put him into a pit before selling him to the Midianite traders. They certainly did intend to harm Joseph, but God had other plans. As we've seen, Joseph was rescued from the pit and was eventually promoted to the equivalent of Prime Minister of Egypt, with responsibility for storing and distributing grain during the famine, which affected Egypt and all the surrounding nations. One of those nations was Canaan, where Joseph's family was still living. So Joseph ends up saving his family by selling grain to them. The harm that the brothers intended, God intended for good when the famine came 20 years later. On the day of Pentecost, Peter says something similar about the people of Jerusalem who killed Jesus. This man was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge, and you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to the cross. But God raised him from the dead, freeing him from the agony of death, because it was impossible for the death to keep its hold on him. That's Acts 2, verse 24. The people of Jerusalem, along with the Jewish and Roman authorities, put Jesus to death. What they did was wicked and evil, in fact the most wicked event in the history of the world, putting God to death when he comes to his earth. But they did this according to God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge. It was God's purpose that this should happen, so that the world should be saved not from death by famine, but from spiritual death, the saving of many lives. So the suffering of Joseph and the suffering of Jesus, both of which led to the salvation of their people, help us to put our suffering into perspective. We may not be able to see it when we're in the midst of our grief and pain, but possibly from the perspective of time, and certainly from the perspective of eternity, we will be able to see the good that God intends in all the ups and downs, the tragedies and the triumphs, the joys and sorrows of our lives. As Paul says in Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Happy Easter, and God bless you.